Hi, my name is Jonathan Bennett. Welcome to Secrets to Nailing Your Elevator Pitch in Just 30 Minutes. So I hope you have a piece of paper and a pen. You're all set up here. Let me jump right off camera and let's dive right into this content. I'm grateful for you joining in and being open to learning something new. Okay, so let me set the scene for you. You are at a work networking event or you're at a holiday party and you are introduced to a new person. And after exchanging pleasantries, the person looks at you and says, so, what do you do? And the dread immediately sinks in. You feel your throat tighten or the anxiety level rise in your body. Well, you're not alone. In my coaching practice, one of the most common blocks that leaders of all types face is knowing how to answer what I like to call the dreaded question. So, what do you do? And look, it's not like we don't all know what we do every single day. It's not a trick question. And yet, it always seems to somehow come as a kind of surprise when we're asked to talk about what it is that we do. Most of us freeze up or we ramble on. It's super frustrating. Occasionally, it's even embarrassing. It doesn't have to be this way. You should be able to look forward to being asked what you do. I mean, it might be a huge opportunity to make a connection or to join a new network. You might be able to unlock some door that was previously closed to you. We all want to get better at this, but it won't happen if we don't do anything about it. So in this course, you're going to put all of that behind you. You're going to get ready to be able to powerfully answer the question, so what do you do? Forevermore. I am so glad you've joined me. Welcome. I came up against this problem of leaders not being able to answer the dreaded question so often that I realized I'd created a kind of simple three-step system that I was helping my clients implement when I thought, I should write this down. I could teach this to lots of different people. It's super easy to memorize, and it can help any kind of leader develop just a killer response to the question. It's easy to memorize because it relies on just 3 trigger words. And in this course, I'm going to teach it to you step by step. So you will always be able to nail it from now on. No more awkward, stumbling answers at dinner parties or networking events or charity fundraisers, or heaven forbid, with potential future employers. This framework is going to help you forever after be able to answer the question, so what do you do, with comfort and ease. So why have I made this course? Look, many leaders, especially those who are closer to the start of their careers, can't easily access high-end executive coaching. I get it. So it's a part of my values and approach to find ways to provide really affordable access to the kind of coaching that I do, and in this case, to a course like this one. It's my way of ensuring that I can serve everyone that wants my support in a really meaningful way. And my video courses are called Coaching Within Reach. And if you enjoy it, please share it with friends and colleagues. Okay, so what is the agenda? What's the curriculum here? What will you learn? Well, first, you're going to learn why this isn't actually hard and how you can get good at it really quickly. Talking about yourself and the impact of what you do is easy, but you need to be ready. And that's what this course is going to teach you. Number 2, you're going to learn my system, the 3 steps that go into a powerful short pitch. Success is not trying to get across everything that you do in record time. Success is learning how to create intrigue. And we're going to talk a lot about that here today. And thirdly, today is practical. You're going to learn how to begin to use what you're learning right away. so you can talk about who you are, what you believe in, and what you do in terms that are powerful and interesting to the person with whom you're speaking. So you may be wondering, who am I? My name is Jonathan Bennett. What do I do? Well, you know how it's often lonely when you're a leader? You know, you can't tell your staff, or you're bored, all your problems, and your partner or your friends, well, they only want to hear you talk about work so much. So where do leaders turn when they need expert advice or a confidant that has been there before? Well, that's me. That's what I do. First, I spend lots of time listening to them so I can find out what's really going on. Next, I ask lots of questions so I can get really clear on what it is that they really want. And finally, I work with them on how to best make it all happen. Now, I'd be happy to tell you more, but first, how about you? What do you do? Okay, so are you intrigued? That's how I talk about myself when somebody asks me what I do. Now, you might be skeptical, like, well, Jonathan, you're a professional, you've got a background in management consulting and communications, and you've got lots of experience in this. You know, I could never sound like that. And I'm here to tell you it's not true. See, here's the thing. I never say it the exact same way twice. I adjust it to match my audience. I adjust it easily on the fly. And that's because it's a system. It's a framework. And you're going to learn how to do it just like I did it now. Mostly what people say is their job title. They say the name of their company, and they kind of sound like their LinkedIn profile, or worse, they kind of ramble on, or maybe they get technical. Sometimes really wonderfully talented people just assume that what they do isn't actually interesting to most other people, and so they just let the conversation pass them by. What a wasted opportunity. They say, oh, I'm just a lawyer, or, oh, I have a company downtown, or I'm a manager. And I mean, these really are golden opportunities that are missed. So I suppose I could have said to you, well, my name's Jonathan. I used to be a CEO and a small business owner, and now I'm a coach. I sit on a couple corporate boards. But I mean, that is so boring. It fails to connect emotionally with you, with who I'm talking to. It fails to create intrigue and interest. So instead, I took what I do every day and I converted it into something that's familiar to everyone. I created a story out of it. And I'm going to teach you how to do that for what it is that you do every day. No matter what it is that you do for a living, you can do it too. Okay, before we jump into the actual system itself, let me just knock off a couple myths. So the first is that only extroverts can do this well. It's just not true. It's not true. Introverts, in fact, need a system more than anyone to be able to make sure that they can communicate what it is they do with intrigue and create curiosity in the mind of the listener. The second is, you only need it if you're in sales, or maybe people think they have to be good at sales or be a good public speaker to do this well. Also not true. Maybe you only need it if you work in an office. Well, I mean, in today's day and age where there's so much work from home, in fact, you need to be able to talk about what you do in social situations that are both work-related and not work-related, because you don't know where your next colleague is going to come from, where your next client opportunity, where your next sale may come from. So this is a way that you are always ready to talk about what it is that you do whenever you may need it. Okay, the first thing we need to do is change your mindset. So the goal here is for us to create a spark in the mind of the person that we're speaking with. It's the start of a conversation. We want to invite curiosity. This is a 30-second moment in time. it absolutely is not something that should be transactional. We are not trying to sell somebody something in the first 30 seconds. We don't want to try to get somebody to give us something in that first 30 seconds either. And we're certainly not trying to comprehensively tell them everything that it is that we do. What we're going to go for here is to create something that feels natural and authentic and normal. And that is the beginning of something that's hopefully beautiful. We're trying to start a new relationship. And we're going to do that by inviting curiosity. So now I'm going to open up the secrets to the system here. So make sure you've got a piece of paper and a pen ready to go. I've also got a worksheet that's included with this course. So if you're not a note taker and you just want to make sure that you've got everything to work on it later, no problems. Just make sure you download the PDF either now or at the end, and you can follow along on the PDF with everything that you need. This system is super simple. As I said, it's really just got 3 trigger words and 3 steps to follow, and you never have to deliver it the same way twice. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's a framework that supports the way you're going to answer this. It's not the exact words that you need to use every time, and it really works. So the first thing we want to do when we get asked the question, so what do you do? Is we want to create curiosity. It's our number one goal because we want the person we're speaking with to become interested. As humans, we love stories. We also love solving mysteries. So if you look at the job that you do, the role that you have as existing to solve a problem, then a story can unfold. So we're looking to create curiosity. How do we do that? We do it by revealing the unique problem that your job exists to solve. I'm going to give you a template, a script in a minute that's going to help you do this. But for right now, the lesson here is that we're trying to create curiosity by revealing the problem that we solve by going to work and doing our job every single day. Next, you want to personalize and connect with the person who's listening. Now, how do you do this? By telling the next piece of the story, by showing how you solve the problem that you do every day, day in, day out. And finally, you want to create an invitation to continue the conversation, continue the learning about one another. And you do this by making an offer or by extending some kind of invitation. So I'm going to walk you through how to do each of these steps in a moment. But this is the basic framework that we're going to be working with here today. This system works because of human psychology. As I mentioned, we love stories. We're addicted to learning how something turns out in the end. When you present a problem, the listener is hardwired to need to find out how that problem gets solved. In this case, what you do every day is solve a specific kind of problem. How you do that creates the intrigue, and your listener is captured. Then you reveal how you do it, and they've connected with you, your job, and very likely will be open to hearing more about what you're interested in, your future ambitions, what it is that you have to sell, the causes that you care about, maybe the products or services later on in the conversation or in some follow-up conversation. Okay, so here are the 3 steps to nailing the dreaded question. So step 1, you're at a networking function, some sort of party or a event, and somebody says, so what do you do? And what you're going to answer with is the following words. Well, you know how. And then what you're going to do is you're going to describe the problem that your job, or maybe even your organization or company, exists to solve or address, and you're going to do it briefly, but so vividly that they can personally imagine or even recall the pain or that problem themselves. And when you do that, They're going to nod. They're going to say, yeah. And then you're going to say, well, that's what I do. That's what I help with. And so step one is creating that curiosity, creating that intrigue. I'm going to give you some examples now of how different jobs can answer this question. So imagine you are a marketing director. You get asked, so what do you do? And here's an answer that you might give. Well, you know how lots of cool businesses are their own best kept secret? You know, they really struggle to stand out from the crowd in this online world we live in. I help my clients be those rare ones that do stand out and do so boldly. Now, if you heard that at a cocktail party, you'd be curious. You'd be curious, how does that marketing director do that? You might be thinking, well, I have a business. I need more sales. I need to listen more to what this person is saying. Okay, here's a second example. This one is from a chief human resources officer. They're asked what they do. Well, you know how the job market has been so up and down over the past few years? So many people quitting, high turnover rate, you've heard of this great resignation, total upheaval in the labor market. Well, I make sure that the company I work for is different. We've avoided most of it. Well, if you hear that, you're thinking to yourself, well, how? What do they know that I don't know, that my company doesn't know, that my organization hasn't figured out yet? I need to learn more about this person's world. Here's a third example. Let's say you're a nonprofit leader and you're asked, oh, what do you do? Well, you know how our city has among the highest incidence of folks who are unhoused? And I mean, beyond the obvious human cost, it's causing huge pressures on our healthcare system. Well, that's what I work on. I lead an organization that's transforming lives and addressing this massive social issue head on. Well, I'm just drawn into that. I need to figure out how this nonprofit leader is making such a big difference. Maybe there's ways I could help, could lend my support. So in each of these three examples, we're creating curiosity through storytelling. We're hooking the listener in by unpacking a problem, unpacking what it is that this person does for a living, in a way that creates curiosity and invites more questions. So just to review, you're asked the question, so what is it that you do? So what do you do? The first step is to create curiosity. That's just what we've done. Well, you know how. And then you describe that problem. You reveal that problem that your job, that your organization exists to solve. So that's what we've done so far. Let's move on to step number 2. How do we personalize this and connect? Well, we're going to show the listener how it is that you solve this problem each and every day. And then we're going to create an invitation so you can continue to learn about what each other does each and every day. So step 2 is the 3 trigger words that I mentioned early on. It's the first, next, finally memory trick. So you're going to answer the question that you get. What do? You're going to say, well, you know how, and then you're going to unpack the problem. How is it that you solve that problem? That's what step 2 does. And you're going to break it down into 3 simple steps. You're going to say, first, and what is going to follow that is what you do first, how you start helping to make things better right away. Then you're going to say, next, and that's where you talk about what options or choices or interventions or steps you take to make things better. And maybe you're going to talk about how they're important or they're unique. And you're going to wrap it all up by saying, finally, and that's where you talk about what happens when your work is done. What are the lasting positive changes or impacts that have occurred because you do your job as well as you do? So in my example that I gave right at the outset, I said, leadership is lonely. There's nobody for many leaders to talk to. There's only so much that you can tell your board of directors or your staff team and your spouse. There's only so much they can and want to hear about. So that's where I step in as a coach. That's what I do. First, I spend lots of time listening to my clients so I can find out what's really going on. Next, I ask lots of questions so they can get really clear on what it is that they want. And finally, I work with them on how best to make it all happen. That's my step 2. We'll give you some more examples of how our 3 previous marketing director, human resources director, and the nonprofit leader answers those first, next, finally steps in just a minute. But step 3 is the invitation. And it's super simple. You say something like, as you can probably tell, I'm really passionate about my work. I'd love to tell you more, but first, you go. Please tell me what it is that you do. So step 2 is the first, next, finally framework. And step 3 is just creating an invitation. So you're asked, what do you do? You begin by creating curiosity, the you know how answer, and then you reveal the problem that your job exists to solve. Next, you personalize and connect by using the first, next, finally framework, and you finish it all off by creating an invitation, by asking them to tell you what they do, or by asking to continue the conversation, maybe connecting with them on LinkedIn, or asking for a call to follow up to learn more about one another. Let's break down some examples and see how this all looks in place. So here's the marketing director. As we already learned, this person's asked the question, so what do you do? And they answer, well, you know how lots of cool businesses are their own best kept secret? They really struggle to stand out from the crowd in this online world we live in. Well, that's what I do. I help my clients be those rare ones that do stand out and do so boldly. Wow, that's amazing. Tell me more. Well, first I connect directly with their customers so I can really deeply understand their needs. Next, I position the product or service in a way that stands out and takes away their pain or serves them in a way that is really powerful. And finally, I launch a campaign that drives this work out in the marketplace to generate new sales. That's me in a nutshell. Tell me about your work. Here's example number 2. It's our Chief Human Resources Officer. They're asked, what do they do? And as we learned, they say, well, you know how the job market has been so up and down over the past few years? Oh, so many people quitting, this high turnover rate, total upheaval in the labor market. Well, I make sure that the company I work for is different because we've avoided most of it altogether. Wow, says the person. That's interesting. Yeah, so first, what I do is I create up-to-date policies and procedures so I could create fairness and accountability across the company. And next, I trained all the managers on how to take great care when onboarding their new staff so everybody feels welcome and supported. And finally, I survey all the employees twice yearly and I publish not just the results of what they're telling us, but what we're doing differently to respond to their ideas. But enough about me. I'd love to hear about you. What is it that you do? And finally, here's the example of our nonprofit leader who was asked at an event, what is it that they do? And they answered, well, you know how our city has among the nation's highest incidence of folks that are unhoused, and beyond the obvious human cost is causing huge pressures for our healthcare system. Well, that's what I work on. I lead an organization that's transforming lives and addressing this massive social issue head on. Wow, says the person that they're speaking with. That sounds really important work. That's thank you for doing that on behalf of all of us. You know, how does your work look? And they say, well, first I ensure that our city's crisis housing is in place and has overflow capacity, because that's been a big issue in the past. Next, I work with regional and local elected officials and their staff to change policy in a way that will harmonize all of our efforts across all of the systems, healthcare, social services, etc. And finally, I build strong relationships with donors who want to save lives and make a huge difference to their neighbors and their neighborhoods. So I'd love to tell you more about our great work, but first you tell me what is it that you do? So let's recap the system. The first step is to create curiosity. You're going to be asked the question, so what do you do? And you're going to answer by saying, well, you know how, and then you're going to insert the problem that your job specifically exists to solve. Think about it in basic human terms. What is it that you do every single day to address some issue, some problem that exists out in the world? How do you make the world a better place? How do you make a system function better? How do you lead? How do you support others to do their work? There's as many different ways to answer this problem that you solve as there are jobs out there. But when people get curious, it's because it's the start of a story that they need to find out how the story ends. So think about it in terms of a problem that you solve, something that your job exists to address every single day. And then you say, that's what I do. The next step is you're going to say how. Personalize and connect. First, next, finally. That's the memory trick. First, and you tell them what you do to start making things better right away. Next, you're going to talk about the next step, whatever intervention that you do to bring things along. And finally, you're going to talk about the lasting results that your job provides, either your company or society or your customers or your clients or your employees. And you end the whole thing through an invitation. I'd love to tell you more, but you go first. You tell me about your work. And this all should take less than 30 seconds. You've created an enormous amount of curiosity. You've educated the person briefly but powerfully on what it is that your job does and that you do every single day. And you've started the beginnings of a relationship. So, like anything that you learn, it's tough at the outset and you need to use it or lose it. So please download the worksheet. It's got all of the steps that I've talked about here today. Next, you're going to create a written draft. So get out yourself a piece of paper and a pen and brainstorm the problem. What are the many different ways that you could answer that? And take that to your colleagues or somebody close to you, maybe a friend or a family member, and practice. Show them the framework and practice and trying to sound as authentic as you can about the different ways that you could answer that question. Remember, you don't need to memorize what it is that you write down. You just need to memorize the framework. You don't want it to sound stiff or rehearsed. You want it to feel relaxed and loose. So the framework allows you to make sure that you always know where you're headed and where you're going and how to not ramble and not freeze up. But it doesn't create a restrictive memorization approach to doing this. You're asked, so what is it that you do? And you're simply going to say, well, you know how, and describe the problem. And then you're going to say, first, next, and finally, and then you're done. And you create an invitation. So it's super simple. And the more you use it in real life, the more easy and fluid you'll become at doing it. And you'll be ready for the next conference, the next social setting that you'll appear in before any time passes at all. And how about some troubleshooting? Well, here's a question I get quite often is how do you use the personal elevator pitch when you're job searching? And my answer to that is you simply just add in a future state or a kind of aspirational line. Go through all the steps just as we talked about it. And after you finish the finally line, and you say, here's how I've made a big difference in my career, you can just add in a little line. And I'm taking on additional responsibilities because I'm looking to advance into a more senior role. That allows the person that you're speaking with to know where you're headed next. You might also say, something like, with all my experience in IT, my next move's probably going to be into healthcare because I really want to take what I know and apply it in a sector with deep human purpose. Something like that. Remember not to ask for a person's help directly right then. You've just begun this conversation. You've just begun this relationship. Allow them the space to become curious themselves. And if they want to, they may offer to help you, either then or later on. So secondly, what if I'm a rambler, or maybe what if I'm shy or introverted? Will this help me? Yes, it will. If you follow it, you only really need and want to talk for 30 seconds or so. So allow the person time and space to speak and respond. And if you talk too much or too little, instead, learn how to ask really good questions. So stay curious. Go through the framework and then ask a question and ask some follow-up questions when you start to hear them talk about what it is that they do. As Michael Bangay Stannett says, tame your advice monster. Stay really curious in the conversation and learn as much as you can about the other person who is telling you about what it is that they do. We all love to talk about ourselves, and if you're the person who's curious and asks lots of questions, they're going to think positively of you. And finally, I get asked this quite a lot, which is what happens if I'm between jobs? Like, how do I talk about this? It's a really awkward thing for somebody to be asked, what is it that you do if you're unemployed? And here's how I'd address that. Focus on the work that you've done in the past, and then pivot to the job that you're seeking next. So talk about all the amazing things that you've done in previous roles, and then just pivot directly to say something like, for example, and the next role I'm on the lookout will be, definitely work from home, and it's going to allow me to use all of my social media skills, or it's going to allow me to manage a diverse team. However that may sound for you. So that's pretty much it. What if you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, well, this is all great. I've created myself a draft and I'm feeling good to go, but I've actually got other issues or other problems. What if I need more support? Well, first thing I'd say is I'm creating affordable courses like this all the time, so please check back in with me. I work with leaders primarily in two ways. As a coach and trusted advisor, I offer both inexpensive groups a few times a year, and so shoot me an email if you want to get on the wait list for the next one, and we can always work on personal branding and pitches in those groups. Secondly, I work, of course, one-on-one with leaders, and that's the most intensive and powerful way. When I work with folks, it's because they want to make huge gains. They're in the middle of big transitions. Maybe they've got big thorny problems in their life or careers. So if that sounds like you, please reach out to book a call so we can meet and we can learn more about one another. And from there, we can see if it's a fit. My LinkedIn QR code is right there. I'd encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. On my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. Thank you so much for taking this course. As I said at the outset, providing access to a course like this is one way, my way, of ensuring that I can serve as many people, at least in some way, as possible. So let's stay in touch on LinkedIn, and I'll connect with you if you send me a request. And I appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.